Before I start this video, the story is about Bromo-Dragonfly, but it was mislabeled as 2CB-FLY. That's why this story went horribly wrong. Thank you, and let's begin. Given the fact that I'm still alive today, I feel it my responsibility to report on the hell that has been the past few days. It is my hope that my first-hand experience with this malevolent substance can add to the canon of evidence regarding these incidents and, hopefully, help our community determine what went wrong. Everything I am writing is based upon my best recollection, which is severely altered, so please bear with me. As, hopefully, all know by now, something terribly, horribly toxic was packaged by Haupt RC, sold as 2CB-FLY, and distributed to an unknown quantity of purchasers around the world in the last 2 weeks. I, unfortunately, was one of the people who received a nice little letter from Denmark containing the faux 2CB-FLY, let's call it Chem-X. I placed my order on September 28th. I received an email from Mr. Haupt on October 1st stating that my order would be mailed that same day. On Wednesday, October 7th, I received the envelope in Barcelona, Spain, and went directly into the drawer of my desk and was not touched until Saturday, October 10th. On this day, at approximately 1:45 p.m., I broke out the Chem-X and some other recent purchases, the comparatively benign MDAI and JWH-073, in order to confirm their weight. I weighed first the MDAI and JWH-073. I used a milligram scale with a small circular metal tray. After I weighed each substance, I poured the weighed material back into its original bag, tapping the rear of the tray as best as I could to remove all residual powder. Of course, there is always a fine layer of material left behind. Finally, I opened the bag of 1,000 milligrams of Chem-X and began to pour it into the tray. The first thing that struck me was the immense volume that such a weight occupied. In comparison with the previously weighed substances, each of whose 1,000 milligrams easily fit in the scale's tray, the Chem-X was extremely fluffy. It was much fluffier than any other 2Cs I have been in contact with as well. In addition, it was a fine powder but with small clumps throughout the bag. I could only fit approximately 700 milligrams on the tray at once, so I weighed the bag in 2 goes. 700 milligrams the first time and the remaining 300 milligrams the second time. The bag weighed perfectly. Mr. Haupt, God rest his soul, was an honest, if ill-prepared chemical salesman. I replaced as much of the Chem-X as I could into its bag, the same one featured in this photo. So at 2 p.m., in a moment of heightened ignorance, I wiped all the Chem-X residue onto my finger, enough to turn the tip of my index finger white, and lipped it. That is to say, I wiped the material into the inside of my mouth opposite the lower lip. Additionally, I picked up a small clump of Chem-X that had fallen on the table and put it under my tongue. Though I really have no accurate manner of judging it, I believe I may have ingested anywhere from 1 to 5 milligrams of the substance. That is my best estimate. Though it may have been more, I really have no idea. At an hour and 15 minutes in, my friend came over to my house. I told him I lipped some of this material and I was feeling a bit weird. Not tripping, but feel like I had a bunch of weird drugs working their way through my system. He noted that I looked a bit fucked up when he arrived. He suggested that it may be because I had combined residual amounts of MDAI, JWH-073, and Chem-X. I agreed and thought nothing more of it. At an hour and 45 minutes in, we smoked a king-size spliff comprised of approximately 1/3 gram of Moroccan hash and 20 milligrams weight of JWH-073, evenly distributed through the tobacco of 1 cigarette. I noticed smoking the joint got me much higher than normal, and I'm a daily marijuana user. I'd also previously tested the JWH-073 without experiencing a similar reaction. The feeling was not so much the lazy, heavy stonedness of the Moroccan chocolate, nor the spacey dopey high of the JWH-073, but rather I began losing my train of thought easily, and it was rather difficult to speak. We finished smoking and went to the store to get some food, water, and snacks. When I was in the grocery store, I had no idea what I should be getting, even though it was Saturday and I needed to buy my food for that day and the following. Stores are closed Sunday here. I ended up with an odd assortment of soft beverages and random snack foods. We walked back to my house, and on the way I noticed it felt very off to be walking. There was a feeling at my feet that made every step feel unnatural. Once we made it back to my house, the intensity was still approximately the same as it had been since we smoked. I couldn't say I was tripping, but it felt like there were some really weird drugs pulsing through my system. I prepared a pizza from a fresh crust with olive oil, tomato, cheese, bacon, and goat cheese. I put it in the oven, and my friend and I began watching a TV episode in the living room. While it was baking, I began noting my first hints of visuals, looking at the walls of the living room and the abstract paintings that are hung there. By 3 hours in, I could barely cut the pizza, let alone eat it. The medallions of goat cheese appeared to be morphing white cesspools on a bed of brown flesh and bubbling blood. Somehow, I got myself to eat 2 or 3 pieces. It tasted good, though after I'd done so, my stomach began aching quite a bit. My friend went home to take a siesta, and from here is when things get blurry. From this point, it is very difficult for me to describe or categorize the way I was feeling, but I'll do my best. I said okay and goodbye, but barely noticed when he left. We were supposed to meet with some friends at a bar at 11 o'clock that night. That didn't happen. I put the Beatles' Rubber Soul on my iTunes and laid down on the sofa. All I wanted to do was not move and keep my eyes closed. The music sounded pretty good, and soon incredible psychedelic scenes were unfolding beneath my eyelids. Such intense closed-eye visuals I've never experienced before. During this time, my mom called from my home country, and I didn't answer because I was too fucked up. That could have been my last chance to talk to her. Thank God, though, it wasn't. Kids, always answer your mom's phone calls. I continued feeling more and more lethargic. I was in a state somewhere between sleep and consciousness when my roommate came into the living room and roused me. He began talking to me in Spanish, and I could barely comprehend what he was saying, let alone start speaking to him. I told him as best as I could that last night was rough, that I wasn't feeling well and I needed to rest. I must have looked crazy and horribly fucked up. I went into my room and laid down on my bed. The music was still playing, but it sounded really loud. I couldn't even bring myself to reach over and turn it down. For the next hour, I was in a nearly catatonic state, unable and not wanting to move. Eyes closed the whole time. I couldn't keep them open. However, the effects kept getting worse. Not in a linear manner, but rather in what seemed an exponential manner. It was 23 degrees Celsius, 74 degrees Fahrenheit outside, yet I was freezing. I was under all of the covers in my bed, yet I began sweating immensely. I couldn't tell if I was awake or sleeping, conscious or unconscious. It seemed I was somewhere in between the two. This scared me a bit. At approximately 5 hours in, I began getting really worried, so I forced myself to sit up, decided to take a hot shower to see if that would help. It didn't. I was still extremely flushed, cold, and perspiring what seemed like gallons of sweat. Mentally, I was a bit delirious, not like psychedelic conscious shifting, but in an uncontrollable disoriented sort of way. Then, about 15 minutes later, I logged online and searched Google. I came upon Arrowwood and my heart dropped when I saw the photo of the exact same bag that was sitting on my desk. I became angry, agitated, and threw the bag and some stuff off my desk. A violent reaction like this is not my character at all. Then I posted the following on Blue Light. I may have accidentally ingested some of this about 5.5 hours ago. Help, what do I do? Thankfully, the board instantly made me realize the gravity of the situation, especially Delsum fan, who stated there was about a 6-hour delay before things got really bad. He was 100% right. I threw on clothes and shoes as quickly as I could in my condition, put the bag of Chemex in my pocket, and began walking as fast as I could to the nearest subway station, about 700 meters. During this walk, I began feeling amazing pulses of energy coming through my brain, but not in a good way. It felt like there was a fireworks show going off in my head. These weird surges would continue randomly until the following day. They were very disturbing and concerned me that some major neurological damage may have been done. I must have looked like a lunatic, and I sure felt like one. I was completely out of it, walking through intersections with complete disregard for cross traffic. The weird feeling in my feet I mentioned earlier had intensified significantly, and I found myself questioning if I could make it to the hospital on my own. I was debating between calling an ambulance and taking the subway, but I finally reached the stop just as the train was arriving. In the metro, I don't remember anything, just dropping buckets of sweat everywhere. Effects were still getting stronger, and I was unsure if I'd be able to walk under my own power into the hospital. Finally, 3 stops later, I arrived to the hospital, and, after nearly being hit by a bus crossing the street, ran into the emergency waiting room. I cut everyone in line, ran to the check-in desk, and began spitting out my story in Spanish as best as I could. The check-in nurse pointed to a staircase and said to go down there ASAP. I took myself into the triage area and explained again the story. The attending nurses were freaking out over the whole thing. I wrote down on a piece of paper the name of Haupt, his website, Arrowwood, the name of the supposed chemical, and Blue Light. I told them I had eaten contaminated 2C B-Fly and gave them the baggie. I was admitted and they put me in a wheelchair and rushed me to the ER. I could barely stand as I had to take off my clothes. They were so wet it felt like I had gone swimming in them. They put me in a gown and went to work. They connected 14 or more EKG probes all over my body to monitor my heart's functioning. They also brought some special type of cardiac monitoring machine, no idea the name, and hooked me up to it. They drew blood for analysis and gave me 2 diazepam, I think 10 milligrams each. The doctor told me all he could do was give me the diazepam, keep the monitors attached, and stand by in case they needed to intervene. The rest was on my body to fight through. I have to say there was a good period there where I didn't feel like I was going to make it. Finally, the diazepam began to ease my extreme tachycardia and lower the blood pressure. However, there was some worry as my diastolic blood pressure began dropping below 60 as my systolic stayed high. Don't know what it means, but the docs were a bit worried. Thank God it passed. Now, diazepam is known for killing trips, but it merely dulled this one. The visuals and delirium persisted through the dosage of Valium, though it did sedate me a bit. I truly believe the diazepam, given to me when it was, helped prevent me from suffering major cardiovascular issues, as I had troubling levels of tachycardia and blood pressure, exact numbers I don't know. In fact, I believe it may be a major reason why I'm still here today to write this report. For the next few hours, I don't remember much. Just the screams and unpleasant noises from the ER seemed amplified in volume and magnified in the way they disturbed me. The open-eyed visuals continued distorting objects for hours. I thought a lot about how this would be such a horrible way to go, especially for my family and friends. What would it do to them for me to leave them like that, over something so stupid, preventable, and especially without telling them goodbye and that I loved them? I was determined to walk out of that hospital. I'm not a religious man, but by God, I prayed my ass off that night. At approximately 14.5 hours in, the doctor told me he was discharging me. I told him I didn't think I was ready to go, but he told me that if I had made it this far, that I would be okay. Unsure, thinking of how Halp died so far into his trip after sleeping, I reluctantly agreed and began to get ready to go home. I still felt awful, like I should be dead. I could still barely walk and I was mentally out of it. Somehow though, I made it home and posted an update on Blue Light. The hallucinations had mostly gone, but the psychological and physical effects maintained their toxic presence in my system. My posting accurately reflects how I was feeling. I don't know if high is the right way to put it. Not right would be more accurate. Like, I'm not tripping, but I definitely still feel like I have poison inside of me. I didn't want to leave the hospital, but they made me. At that point, I still felt unsure I was going to be okay. I was still afraid to sleep because of what I'd read about Halp's passing, but finally I turned off the laptop and tried to get some sleep. I got a horrible night's sleep, maybe 4.5 or 5 hours of oft-interrupted slumber. Probably never got more than 30 consecutive minutes of sleep. At about 21 hours in, I woke up and lay in bed, feeling like I should be dead. Both my head and body felt absolutely awful, like I had been poisoned and that poison was still inside of me. A little while later, I called my friend Vita Verde and she told me to come over to her place right away. Since then, I have been under her watchful eye and she has been the most amazing, wonderful friend and nurse anyone could ask for. At 24 hours in, she gave me 1 milligram clonazepam and that really helped me. The rest of the day I spent feeling not right. I don't know how to explain it. It really is impossible to describe. I didn't feel like myself. I could still feel the Chem-X just marinating in my system doing bad things. I didn't move from her couch nearly the whole day and the time just passed by without me noticing. I felt horrible physically. I felt like I shouldn't be here. At 34 hours in, I took another 1 milligram clonazepam and proceeded to fall asleep on Vita Verde's sofa. I was out within 3 minutes and didn't wake up for almost 11 hours. When I woke up about 45 hours in, I felt refreshed physically, but my brain still felt odd. Now, at nearly 50 hours in, though physically feeling stronger, I still don't feel right. I'm sorry I can't be more specific. There's just no way for me to verbalize the way my head feels. Physically, I'm still lethargic and without any motivation to do anything. It has taken me several hours to write this report. I have no appetite. Vita Verde's been giving me little bits of food and I've been eating it, but I have no physical nor mental urge to do so. I have been drinking a saline and electrolyte solution that has been helping a lot to replenish the salts and minerals I lost through the flushing and sweating. I still don't feel normal. I hope I do soon. Right now, I am thankful that I am alive and able to be here writing this report. Thanks to everyone at Blue Light for their advice, concern, and support. I am thankful for the hospital employees for trying to help me, and I am especially thankful for Vita Verde's companionship and support through this whole ordeal. The recovery would have been a lot worse if I had to suffer through it alone. Thanks to everyone, and I hope that this report may contribute in some way to understanding what exactly was in that batch of 2C B-Fly.